Hello and welcome to the Justice Factor, coming to you live from our studios in Hyde Park, Johannesburg. The matric results have come and gone. What happens now to the thousands of matriculants who have completed their 12 years of schooling? My guest to answer these and other questions is Higher Education Minister Dr. Nzimande. In the final segment of the show, we will, as usual, give you our winner and big loser of the week. But first, we turn to the murder of cartoonists at the French satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo last week. Are there limits to free speech? Why isn't much noise being made about worse attacks by Boko Haram, for example, in Nigeria? My guests are Professor Anton Harber from Wits University and Allison of the Daily Maverick. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Professor Harber, let me start with you. Why was the reaction so big to the murder of the cartoonists in Paris?
Because when you attack the media, you draw the media's attention. Because there's a because free speech is considered so important, so fundamental a value, that to see it attacked puts everyone on edge. That it was such a brutal attack. But there's also the factors that make news. It happened in a major capital where there's many journalists, where there aren't language barriers. A whole range of factors go to make it bigger news than if it had happened in Nigeria, for example.
Indeed. Allison, you wrote a piece in the Daily Maverick in which you say, actually, look what happened in Baga. Now, in Baga in Nigeria. Tell us a bit about what happened in Baga and why you feel that we are all sitting here folding our hands and actually not pointing out how bad it was there.
Well, we're actually still waiting for the full details of what happened in Baga. Initial estimates suggest that something like 2,000 people, perhaps a little bit more, perhaps a little bit less, were killed when Boko Haram attacked the city. The Nigerian military sort of fled in advance of the Boko Haram attack, and the civilians were left to fend for themselves. Now, this massacre was unfolding over exactly the same time frame as the Paris attacks, perhaps even a few days earlier, I think, and yet it took a long time for any news of it to seep through into the international media, and even when it did, there really wasn't that big emotional, passionate response. Now, I don't buy that the Paris attacks were bigger news because they were an attack on journalists. If you look at the Boston bombings of 2013, the marathon bombings, those were also huge news, and that wasn't to do with journalists. So I think there is a more fundamental question of whose lives are more important? I mean, 2,000 people dead compared to, I think it was 17 in the final death count of the Charlie Hebdo attack. It seems such an anomaly that the Baga did not get more coverage.
I was interested in the fact that, and I think you mentioned it in your piece, that, for example, the president of Nigeria was very quick, Goodluck Jonathan, was very quick to issue a statement condemning the attacks in Paris, but said not a word. In fact, I think only today or in the past 24 hours has he sort of woken up to the fact that something terrible happened.
Exactly, and you know, while the news of Baga was breaking, the presidential spokesman was actually tweeting pictures from his daughter's wedding. I mean, it's sort of Marie Antoinette territory. It's fiddling while Rome burns. The Nigerian government are really loath to deal with the problem. I think partly that's because it's an election season, so this huge security issue does not reflect well on President Goodluck Jonathan's administration, and he's definitely keen to try and downplay it. But you can't downplay 2,000 people dead.
But does that absolve me in South Africa? And I'm one of those people who did tweet a Jesus Charlie hashtag from not paying attention to something as bad as this.
No, in fact, you can understand the northern, the European media being taken up by the Paris story in a huge way. The extraordinary thing is that our own media, the African media, have given more attention to what happened in Paris than to what happened in Nigeria. So Simon is quite right. You can't put it down. There are many factors that make one news story bigger than another. But this one is quite extraordinary that our own media didn't say, well, this is at least as big and as important to us.
Could it be that that we're also reflecting, Anton Harber, that a magazine of that nature couldn't possibly exist in South Africa, could it? It would have been shut down. If I look at the issue of the spear, if I look at when the cartoonist Zapiro drew an image of the Prophet Muhammad, and what happened, the clamping down and the anger with which those were treated, that people like Charlie Hebdo, who do what they do, it would have been no-no.
I think that's right. I think that it would have been extremely difficult in the South African context. I mean, what you're pointing to is the fact that they're extremely provocative. Some of their cartoons are deeply offensive.
Some of them are racist. I mean, Barack Obama depicted as a monkey, for example.
Exactly, exactly. And I think that's created a dilemma for editors who are under pressure to run the cartoons in solidarity.
And some did.
And some did. I must say that I'm not sure I would have. I think one wants to show solidarity. And I think there's many ways to show solidarity. But my view is you must run the cartoons if you're comfortable with them, if you're happy running with them. You have to draw a difference between defending their right to be offensive and whether one makes one's own choices as an editor or journalist to do that.
But if I say the Constitution of South Africa, Allison, you can come in here. If I say the Constitution of South Africa allows me to really push the envelope, and that I shouldn't be stopped from publishing those cartoons because I am afraid for my life. I should be afraid that people will come at me and say, you're wrong to do this, Justice Malala, but that I'm afraid for my life. That is a totally different take on this than making an editorial decision, isn't it?
No, that's one worries that now editors will make decisions in a situation of fear, that fear and threats will affect their decision making. So, and the problem is that if you allow that to happen, it will happen more and more with other stuff that isn't as provocative or as offensive.
I think this is exactly the problem in Nigeria, is that this has happened. Nigeria is a place where it is very, very difficult to do good journalism, especially in the northeast of the country where Boko Haram have targeted journalists, they've targeted communications. They're making it extraordinarily dangerous for media professionals to do their job. The reports that we did get from Baga came from journalists. The closest was 600 kilometers away. And even there, they were in danger. They were working in very difficult circumstances. So, but this is part of the problem of why this isn't bigger news, is because, I guess, the clampdown on free speech has already happened there. I want to ask you a question, Simon, just one for you. I was amazed to see Gabon's Ali Bongo Ndimba in that march in Paris. It was outrageous.
With so many, and there are others. There's the leader in Egypt who's got Al Jazeera journalists locked up, and many others. It was quite a bit of hypocrisy going on there.
You wonder if they realized what the whole Charlie Hebdo thing was about, if they realized it was a march in support of free speech, or if they just thought it was what they did. They sold it to their constituencies as a march against terrorism. And this gives them the license in their countries, I mean, the Egyptian one is a great example, to go against terrorists, being the code name for political opposition. So it's very dangerous territory we get into when we start forming these alliances of unsavory political figures, and then what they can do with that.
Professor Harber, one quick question to you. My next guest is Dr. Nzimande. He said in a speech last week that actually newspaper sites and media houses should not allow the comments under their news stories, and that so many of them are racist and so forth, and that they should be held responsible for it. Do you agree with him?
They are responsible, both legally and morally, for carrying comments that might be racist, for example, or be hate speech. And yes, I believe that they should be taking action. I think there's global best practice emerging for ways in which to manage to encourage positive and interesting and worthwhile and commentary while keeping out the stuff that's racist and hate speech. So I think Dr. Nzimande had a point. I think the publications should do it themselves. I would discourage state intervention, but something should be done to prevent.
Professor Anton Harber, thanks so much. Simon, Allison, thanks so much both of you for your participation. After the break, we asked Dr. Nzimande how he plans to ensure that ordinary South Africans can afford escalating university fees.